Are you struggling to fly a tidy circuit? Does your final approach feel more like guesswork than precision? Or maybe your base turns more like a coin toss, literally. Today, we're breaking down how to fly an accurate circuit and consistent landings, no matter what aircraft you're in, and start flying like a pro. I'm going to discuss all this and more coming right up. So strap in and let's get into it.
Good morning, 3614, 95 Mallow 7 POB with altitude.
Coordinating, Halen, I'm running bank pressure rolling at 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there. Stand by star 9000, 1013, K 525.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 174 of the Flight Training Australia podcast. The podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. I'm your host, Trent Robinson. G'day, and great to have you with me for another awesome week of aviation. It's dry season. It is cool up here in Darwin. I tell you, there's been some cool mornings. It's been a chilly 21, 22 degrees. It's even dropped below 20 a couple of days. And my goodness me, having to nearly crack out the jumpers and jackets. Pray for us all down south. I know it's hard. It's cold for us, all right? But beautiful weather. I'm very much forward to going to do some camping very, very soon. It's been something that I've been talking about for years and just keep letting life get in the way and too much flying. But I am blocking off my schedule. I've just put in a 12-volt system in the car today. Thanks, Simon and Will, for your help with that. And everything's looking fantastic. It's something I wanted to do for ages. Got a new awning coming. Swag's ready to roll. And, just got to load up the fridge and all the gear and go and have some fun. Find some great spots around the territory. Flown all through Kakadu. Haven't seen it from the land, apart from a few airports I've been to. So it's about bloody time. It's been 6 years now to head out and enjoy that, other than just Litchfield National Park, which is a beautiful spot. And for those of you that come up on the GA transition course, I'll take you down to Litchfield and fly around the waterfalls as part of our air exercises that we do on the course. But being on the ground and just enjoying the stars and the cool weather is definitely something I'm looking forward to getting into. Now, last week I mentioned about the Darwin landing fees and, the impacts on aviation and the costs involved and everything else. And rather timely, I guess, and it's not a surprise to anyone, but we all know the Western Sydney airport construction and the impact on the airspace in the Sydney area that's happening, but more importantly on Bankstown Airport. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty concerned about that. It really looks like, New South Wales, Sydney is about to not have a main Class D airport that's going to be functional. If you're listening and from Bankstown, I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on all this and what you reckon's going on. I'm obviously removed from the immediate conversation other than what I read in the online aviation magazines and journals, that sort of stuff. But just where to put a training area, where all that area to the west is just going to disappear. The corridors, the safety requirements of 80-speed transponders trying to get up and down these narrow corridors, not to mention the time of transit to get to an airspace that's going to be functional and usable. And how do you send a student solo for a training area solo or a solo nav? Like, it just looks absolutely nightmarish. Guys, we got to really think about this and not just, like I said to you the other week, don't worry about it because it's Darwin, or don't worry about it because it's Bankstown. I don't live there. Because once it happens in one place, it happens everywhere else. And if you haven't seen a documentary called 16 Right, I've mentioned it once or twice before, but it just really paints the picture, I think, of the importance of aviation and community, and really the importance of airports. And once that airport is gone, it's gone. It will never come back. The land will be repurposed, rezoned, redesignated, and that's the end of it. And that was the classic example of Chicago Meigs field, that if you were a flight simmer like me as a child, The default airport for Microsoft Flight Sim was Meigs Field in Chicago there. And one night, the mayor sent in some trucks. Instead of painting white crosses on the runway, just dug up big crosses in the runway, dug it all up. Aircraft that were still there, they had to use the taxiway to get out. And that was the end of it. And this is happening globally all over the place. You look at the number of GA airports that are around. They are slowly getting swallowed up through redevelopment. And, that's not necessarily what's going on with Bankstown. But even the whole process of the privatization of airports was supposed to always be for the betterment of aviation. And I think we've seen enough examples now that it's anything but. Anyway, not what today's episode's about, but I just wanted to touch base and remind everybody to stick together and make sure you stay active in your airport, local community discussions. If people are trying to just move in and close it down because of aircraft noise, because they just don't want to deal with it, we've got to discuss that. And we need to educate. We're really, really good at talking to ourselves about how important we are, but not necessarily to those who don't understand. And so open days and, all that sort of stuff that promotes aviation in the community, joy flights, scenic flights, open days, learn to fly days, all that sort of stuff. I'm only too happy to support. And if you let me know about them, I'm happy to share your event in Instagram story or Facebook or whatever else. And let's get the importance of aviation out there into the community and make sure we protect our airports because, like I said, once they're gone, they are gone forever. One such event coming up is the Temora Flyers Incorporated Youth and Aviation event. It's in September, and they're desperately trying to put this on as a free event. So free participation. There's going to be some aerial displays with Paul Bennett and Freedom Formation and others there. So make sure you get along to support that activity. That's going to be happening, like I said, in a few months' time. And these are the sort of events that we definitely want to get behind and support. These things aren't cheap. There's a GoFundMe page, and you can get a hold of Rob there to support that. But Saturday the 6th of September is the Youth in Aviation event. And I certainly would be going if I was over that way. But make sure you look up all these sort of things and get behind them. Now, lately, in all the flying that I'm doing up here, a common theme is, again, it's no surprise to me, but it is definitely becoming more and more apparent as more flying takes place. And that is the circuit. Now, again, guys, I'd love your feedback on all this and have a listen and then send me a message, email me or whatever else. But what the hell's going on out there? Why can't people fly a circuit? I'll tell you why. Because everyone keeps going to the same airports over and over and over, knows when to turn base and final. And again, I've talked about this before, but apparently I need to talk about it again. As soon as you go to a new airport, you're completely lost. You default right back to primacy methods, and that is throw everything you've been learnt out the window. I just said learnt, didn't I? Everything you've been taught out the window and start doing weird things instead of just doing what was hopefully taught to you in the first place. So I just want to touch on that and give you some tips on how to fly a better circuit, because if you don't do a good circuit, the odds of doing a good landing are pretty small. It is one of the first things we learn, and remembering all the general handling leading up to circuits is all for the circuit itself, to teach you how to position the aircraft, to control the airspeed, raise the nose a little bit as we slow down, reduce our power, get some gear out, flaps out, depending on what you're flying, and set it up for a beautiful approach and then landing. And nothing feels better when you pull it off. But right now I'm seeing circuits looking more like a 50-cent piece. Now, I'm pretty sure there was only about 5 legs of the circuit, but apparently there's some more now. All right, so let's have a look. Let's have a talk about it. Really want to talk through the circuit itself, and then the other thing that happens when you come up to Darwin or you start doing instrument flying, is you do a long 5-10 mile final approach. Now, if you've got instrument approach, it's not so bad because you've got all this guidance to bring you down on a nice 3 degree or so profile. But what if you've got to do it visually? So we're going to have a look at that as well. So whether you're a student just getting started or a commercial pilot trying to brush off things, this episode's for you. All right, so flying a good circuit, let's just get back to basics. All right, the fundamentals of why do we fly a circuit in the first place? Well, it's not just to annoy the neighbors, all right, although sometimes it might feel that way. The circuit is a standardized, predictable way of entering and exiting a landing pattern and circuit pattern. It provides spacing, separation, gives everybody a good idea of where you're going to be and what you're going to be doing next, because it's a standardized format if you're doing it properly, and provides ourselves the right setup for landing the aeroplane and obviously being aligned with the runway eventually. Now, each leg has a purpose, doesn't it? So upwind and crosswind, you're either climbing away or joining the circuit and turning once you've got enough height and speed. Downwind, we're going to level off parallel to the runway, reduce our power, set our slow cruise configuration or circuit power settings. Time, if we haven't done them already, is to do our pre-landing checks. And I'm very big on that term pre-landing checks and not downwind checks, guys, because as soon as you stray from the circuit area and you start doing straight in approaches and that sort of thing, or joining anywhere in the circuit other than downwind, guess what? You forget. If you're using downwind as your prompt, then it can be problematic down the track. So again, train for the real world, plan for the real world, and do your pre-landing checks wherever the appropriate location is, but think about them as a pre-landing check, not just a downwind reference. All right, runway, we want to space ourselves. Should be just under the wingtip or so, third of the way down the wing strut, all those sort of little tips. Again, depends on what airplane you're flying, if it's high wing or low wing, etc., which we'll touch on in a minute. The base leg, nice and square, perpendicular to the runway. Beginning your descent, configuring the aircraft, starting to think about the glide path and the approach. You need to forward project. All right, and then final being the stable approach. Everything's all configured now. Your aiming point is set. You've trimmed for your target speed and attitude. Pretty much hands off unless you're having to adjust for wind and things. It should just be settled, stable, and come on down. Now, aircraft type. Remember, one size fits all, doesn't it? No. You're going to find aircraft that need to fly a nice rectangular style pattern. You're going to find others that need to fly an elliptical style pattern, a big oval. Right? And that's all going to be based on its speed and performance. All right. Not every aircraft flies the same way. So you can't fly a Piper Warrior the same way you're going to fly a Baron or a Caravan. And it's not just about speeds and flap settings. It's about energy management, weight, drag, power response, visibility, the sight picture out the front. All these things are going to be deciding factors. Some aircraft are far more forgiving and fairly responsive, slow down very, very quickly. Others take time to lose excessive speed. A faster, heavier aircraft might need a slightly wider circuit, steeper base turn, and a more precise approach. Anything else is going to be unstable and force a missed approach. Right? But one of the biggest factors that all of these aircraft does have in common is your seating position. Whether you're high wing, low wing, bubble canopy, tandem, sitting in the front or the back, it all can change your perspective. One of the number one landing problems I see, and again, I've mentioned this many times, so sorry to sound like a broken record, but if you're not sitting in the right position, you're not going to be able to see outside properly. Your profile's going to be all whack. And instructors, if you're listening, if your student starts doing weird things in the flare, have a look and check their eye height. If it's not high enough, up around the top of the window, if you're in a Cessna, for example, they're too low. They're going blind. They're basically flaring and throwing a Hail Mary and hoping the hell we land on the hard stuff in between the white markers. Okay, so before, preferably, you go flying, do a cushion check, do a seat position check, make sure the seat's wound up properly, wind it up when you're not sitting on the seat so you don't screw up or mess up the screw jack. It can shear under weight, so take your weight off when you wind it up and make sure you're in the right position. Everyone else listening to this, if you think you're in the right position, have another think about it, because if you're having trouble landing, that's probably one of the major contributing factors. All right, this 50-cent circuit I keep talking about, what do I mean? Well, 50-cent piece has a lot of edges, doesn't it? Which means the airplane keeps doing all these extra turns rather than the standard circuit joint or circuit pattern. All right, so I want you to do a 90-degree turn. When we do our lookout, clear right, center left, we're not just looking for traffic. We should be also nominating a reference point somewhere that is going to be 90 degrees to our left that we're going to roll out on, and that should give us a nice, roughly perpendicular square leg of the circuit. In this case, crosswind, downwind, base or final. Now, instead of doing that, what everybody's doing is looking back to the runway and banking and rolling out and banking, rolling out, banking and rolling out. And it just makes everything an absolute mess. It makes you work harder when you're flying the circuit, and it just doesn't work well. All right. It's just harder than it needs to be. All right. So instead of those nice, deliberate, square, calculated legs, you've got weird arcs, extra turns. It's distracting. It usually means we blast through the circuit altitude by 200-300 feet, constantly looking over your shoulder to see where am I supposed to turn, looking at the runway. Don't forget the basics, guys. Don't fly circuits looking back at the runway. Fly the circuit itself. All right. We want to fly to the circuit, reference the runway. We've planned consistent turns using those reference bell points, not guesswork. If you get lost and not sure where to go, look at your DG or your HSI. Break that up into 90-degree elements. If you can't figure out where to go or you're not sure, there's no real good reference point out there, then use that to guide you. That's okay. You can do that. All right, use ground references by all means, but don't become so reliant on them that if Bunnings or whatever it is not there on the base turn, you don't know when to turn base. Because that's what happens when everyone comes up here. They fly in different airports, and it must be happening at other airports as well, because there's plenty of other places for everybody to go as well. Really work on that. Be aware of it, especially when you're getting ready to turn final. You know you're meant to look at the runway when you turn final, so you can turn onto the runway. The runway is your reference point, right? Rather than just blasting on through. And the next one we've got to think about while we are positioning ourselves is once you've got your reference point set, think about the wind. Wind, wind, wind. Where is the wind coming from? How is it going to affect you in the circuit? Is it going to blow you in towards the runway? Is it going to blow you away from it? Okay, that's on downwind. What about on crosswind or base? Is it going to blow you away? Typically base type, it's always going to blow you out. If the wind's blowing you in on base, then you're probably lined up on the wrong runway and you've got a tailwind, okay? So really work on that spacing, plus or minus your drift. Always thinking about drift. If you can do that now, when you start doing instrument flying, night flying and other flying, and you're taking in the wind, your circuits are just going to be gorgeous. All right, final approach, where all the magic happens. All the wheels come off, isn't it? I so often get students fixing something about 150, 200 feet when it's just been so obvious the whole time, which tells me that they don't know what they're looking for. Or they're just hoping, which I know some of you do, we've all been guilty of it at some point, is that just maybe it will fix itself. If we just think and hope really, really hard, it's not going to happen. All right, the aiming point. What is the aiming point? The aiming point is the point on the runway that you are looking at to fly over and commence your round out, your flare, your hold off, whatever you want to call it. All right, which is commonly around 50 feet, thereabouts over the threshold, and then probably about 10 feet over that aiming point. If the aiming point starts moving up the windscreen, that's you getting low. Now, what do I mean by that? Remember the aspect. the aspect of the runway should be nice and wide at the base, and the far end of the runway should be about 2/3 of the width of the threshold. If the runway starts getting narrow, you're too high and you're looking down on it in most cases. If it's getting really fat and short, then you're probably getting too low. Now, of course, sloped runways can skew this view on what it looks like, but in most cases, that's what's going on. If the runway starts moving up the windscreen, that's you starting to sink. It's starting to rise up. The runway should stay in the same place on the windscreen and just get bigger. If the runway starts moving down the windscreen, that's you getting high. Right? So if we're looking high, we're looking low. We want to fix that up. So power, some of you are going to use it for airspeed. Some of you are going to use it for rate of descent. Like I said, I don't mind. In smaller, lighter aircraft, it can go both ways. But in larger aircraft, 100% power controls airspeed. There's no ifs, buts, or maybes on that one. But just make sure your power plus attitude plus configuration is trimmed, which will give you your set performance. If your speed that you want on base is 90 knots, then make sure you've got 90 knots. Don't use the buffers to add and say that that's acceptable. Hit the speed. If you can hold 95 knots, you can hold 90. Okay? Same thing as if you can hold 90, don't be at 85. Hit 90 every time. Fly the same way at the same time each circuit. Consistency is what we're looking for. Finally, common mistakes. Some of the most common mistakes I'm seeing is just turning for the sake of it. Flying too tight, too wide on downwind leads to rushed or shallow base leg. Fixating inside, especially with glass cockpits and iPads and things. Everyone's looking inside and looking at, tell me where to go, oh great one. That's not how it works. You need to look outside. You don't need the G1000 synthetic vision and everything else to see the runway. You need to be looking outside. Space yourself accordingly. All right. Don't just drag it in with flap and power and idle power and fix it all up right at the last minute. All right. I prefer to use flap to achieve a speed, not maintain a speed, not using flap to achieve the speed. Or, if you can't have that flap, then you're not going to get slow enough. You've left everything too late. You're not managing the energy of that aircraft appropriately. All right. Going from really high approaches to perfect profile, but not seeing it, then descending through to a low approach. Then we end up slow and low and then high and fast, leaving power on too long, floating. It's just not pretty. All right. Fly a nice stabilized approach. And if it's not working, go around. Now, remember, the aiming point and the touchdown point are two different things. And if we look at MOS Schedule 8, the touchdown point should be 60 to 120 meters plus or minus from our nominated aiming point. Now, if you're floating more than a couple of gable markers down the runway or a couple of runway lights worth, well, guess what? You're going too far. You're carrying excess speed, or you're leaving the power on, or you're mucking around and doing a combination of all the above. All right. But you're not in the tolerances required for license issue and for passing OPCs and other flight tests you're going to be doing down the track. So work on that and make sure you get that accuracy. All right. So now that we've got a circuit down pat, how are we going to now do a straight in approach? Now, straight in approaches are important skill set to learn. Flight schools that are not doing straight in approaches, please stop it. Seriously, I don't know what your opposition to doing a straight in approach, like it's some cheap maneuver or dirty. There is so much skill required in flying a straight in approach that I don't know why you're not doing it. If you're one of these schools that isn't doing it, I'd love to hear your reasons why. Okay. Now, we're not talking about primacy and we're not talking about first solos, all right? But for private pilots and commercial pilots, private pilots should at least do one or two at some point and work it through, understand how to see the perspective, the aspect from that far out, and then getting into commercial training, 100%. should be done. The rules associated with it as well, but most importantly, getting the aircraft configured. Now, one of the issues you have with the 210, especially their models and things, is at flat 20, we need to get back to 105 knots, 104, 105 knots. So a lot of people do okay getting the gear and flap out. That's 140 knots for the first stage of flap and gear in most 210s. Again, there's different speeds for different models. But then they lower the nose to commence the approach down from a 5 mile final or whatever. And now we're too fast. We just can't get back into a 105 knot range. The only way to do it is either descend below the glide slope, level off, pull the power back, use the drag to get us into that range, dump the flap, and then get the nose back down. That's just disjointed and really not planned well. All right, so 3 miles, need to have everything nicely configured, get it trimmed, set up, and I tell the students to have a think about looking at in front. Imagine where the final leg goes to and where the base leg is, and then rather than having that 90-degree bend in the base leg, straighten that out towards you and then bring the downwind towards you. And that's going to be roughly a 3 mile final if you add the base, or 5 mile final, sorry, if you add the base and downwind onto it. 3 mile final if you add the base and final. So where you would normally be in that base position is where you want to be on that 3 mile final at 90 knots with your gear and flap out and on your descent. All right, a 10 mile final, same sort of thing. The runway's looking a lot smaller, so we really need to think about how that is. And it's very unlikely you're going to get a 10 mile final straight in join. It's really more for instrument approaches. But 3 and 5 mile finals, doing a straight in approach is definitely a maneuver you should be practicing. And if you come up to Darwin and do the geo transition course, it's 100% something that you'll get to do because it's pretty much the default way of getting into Darwin every single time. All right. But it throws everybody when they've never done it before, which is really disappointing. So flight schools out there, if you're listening, please consider showing your instructors how to do it first. And then, because there's no point just trying to figure it out with a student, that doesn't help anybody. And then including it in your syllabus. Right, these extended techniques, it will teach discipline. It teaches maintaining a glide slope, energy management, controlling the descent, setting a power and an attitude and allowing the speed to come back rather than expecting everything to happen all at once. Remember, as we get into bigger, faster airplanes, they take a little bit longer for things to slow down and arrest that speed. All right, so hopefully there are some tips in there that are going to help you out with your landings and your approaching, just things to really think about, consider. They come down to good planning, spacing, judgment, but most importantly, that consistency. All right. Have a look, record your landings and circuits on those runways. How's your downwind? Are they all overlapping each other? Are you turning crosswind the same point? Are you turning base at the same point? Or are they all completely different positions? Are you overshooting final? All right. Start asking yourself why and analyze your flying there. Mastering all this will build the foundation of your flying. From the first solo right the way through to your airline check ride and everything in between. All right. And if you've got a good story about tips that you've been taught for your circuits, or you want to question what I've mentioned here, or take issue with anything I've said as well, and you disagree, shoot me a message. You can hit me up on Instagram. You can email me, info@TrentRobinson Aviation. All the links are in the episode description. I'd love to hear from you. All right, guys. Until next time, please stay safe and remember the golden rule. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Talk soon, everyone. Cheers.